Did you know that by 1775, just 40 Scottish families controlled more wealth than entire European kingdoms? These weren't royalty or nobles. They were the Glasgow tobacco lords, and their spectacular rise and catastrophic fall represents one of history's most dramatic economic collapses. In the early 1700s, Glasgow was a small, unremarkable Scottish port city. The River Clyde barely accommodated fishing boats, and most residents lived in modest stone houses along narrow medieval streets. But everything changed when enterprising Scottish merchants discovered a golden opportunity across the Atlantic Ocean. The American colonies were producing vast quantities of tobacco, a crop that Europeans craved with an almost addictive fervor. Virginia and Maryland plantations, worked by enslaved Africans, generated millions of pounds of tobacco leaves annually. However, English merchants in London dominated this lucrative trade, leaving scraps for everyone else. Clever Glasgow merchants spotted a weakness in this system. London was geographically disadvantaged, requiring ships to navigate treacherous English Channel waters and lengthy Thames approaches. Glasgow, positioned on Scotland's western coast, offered a shorter, more direct route to American ports. The first Glasgow tobacco ship, the Lovely Nellie, departed for Virginia in 1718. Captain James Ritchie returned 6 months later with his vessel's hold crammed with premium tobacco leaves. The profits were staggering. A single voyage could generate returns of 300% or more. Word spread quickly through Glasgow's merchant community. Ambitious families like the Cunninghams, Buchanans, Spears, and Glassfords began pooling resources to finance tobacco expeditions. They established sophisticated credit networks, extending loans to American planters in exchange for guaranteed tobacco shipments. By 1740, Glasgow had transformed beyond recognition. Magnificent mansions lined newly constructed streets. The tobacco lords, as locals called them, wore scarlet cloaks, powdered wigs, and carried gold-headed walking canes. They strutted through Glasgow's Trongate district like peacocks, displaying their wealth ostentatiously. John Glassford became the most prominent tobacco lord. He owned 25 ships and employed hundreds of clerks, captains, and dock workers. His Glasgow mansion featured imported marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and rooms filled with American mahogany furniture. Glassford's annual income exceeded that of most English dukes. The tobacco lords didn't merely import tobacco. They created an integrated business empire spanning 2 continents. They established stores throughout Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina, selling European manufactured goods to American colonists. These stores accepted tobacco as payment, creating a closed-loop economic system that maximized profits. Glasgow's population swelled as workers flocked to support the tobacco trade. Shipbuilders, rope makers, sail weavers, and dock laborers found steady employment. The city's port expanded dramatically, with dozens of tobacco warehouses lining the Clyde River. By 1760, Glasgow handled over half of Britain's tobacco imports. The tobacco lords wielded enormous political influence. They controlled Glasgow's city council, funded parliamentary candidates, and lobbied for favorable trade policies. William Cunningham served as Glasgow's Lord Provost while simultaneously managing his tobacco empire. The line between private business and public governance virtually disappeared. These merchant princes lived lavishly, hosting elaborate dinner parties and funding artistic endeavors. They commissioned portraits by renowned painters, collected rare books, and patronized musicians. The University of Glasgow received substantial donations from tobacco profits, expanding its facilities and academic programs. However, the tobacco lords' empire rested on increasingly shaky foundations. American colonists grew resentful of British taxation and trade restrictions. The Sugar Act of 1764 and Stamp Act of 1765 sparked widespread protests throughout the colonies. Glasgow merchants initially dismissed these disturbances as temporary inconveniences. Tensions escalated rapidly after 1770. The Boston Massacre, Boston Tea Party, and subsequent intolerable acts pushed American colonists toward open rebellion. Glasgow's tobacco lords watched nervously as their American business partners became increasingly hostile toward British authority. John Glassford wrote to his Virginia agent in 1774, "The political situation grows more alarming daily. Our American friends speak of independence with frightening frequency. Should hostilities commence, our entire enterprise faces ruin. Glasford's fears proved prophetic. On April 19, 1775, British troops clashed with colonial militias at Lexington and Concord, igniting the American Revolution. Within weeks, American ports closed to British shipping. Tobacco shipments ceased entirely, cutting off the tobacco lords' primary revenue source. The collapse was swift and merciless. Glasgow merchants had extended enormous credit to American planters, expecting tobacco payments that would never arrive. William Cunningham alone was owed over £2,000 by Virginia planters, equivalent to tens of millions today. These debts became instantly worthless. Panic gripped Glasgow's financial district. Banks called in loans, demanding immediate repayment from heavily leveraged tobacco lords. Many couldn't meet these obligations, having invested everything in ships, warehouses, and American inventory. Bankruptcy proceedings began within months of Lexington and Concord. John Glasford, once Scotland's wealthiest merchant, lost his entire fortune. His magnificent mansion was sold to pay creditors. His fleet of 25 ships sat idle in Glasgow harbor, their holds empty. Glasford died in poverty in 1783, a broken man haunted by his empire's destruction. The social impact was devastating. Thousands of Glasgow workers lost their jobs as the tobacco trade evaporated. Ship carpenters, warehouse clerks, and dock laborers faced unemployment and destitution. Entire neighborhoods that had prospered during the tobacco boom fell into decay. Some tobacco lords attempted to salvage their fortunes by supporting the British war effort, hoping American defeat would restore their trade networks. They funded loyalist militias and provided intelligence to British commanders. These efforts proved futile as American independence became irreversible. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 officially ended the American Revolution, permanently severing the tobacco lords' Atlantic connections. A few merchants managed to recover by diversifying into cotton, sugar, or manufacturing, but the golden age of Glasgow's tobacco empire had ended forever. Glasgow's transformation from tobacco hub to industrial powerhouse began almost immediately. Former tobacco warehouses became cotton mills and iron foundries. The city's commercial infrastructure, built during the tobacco boom, supported new industries that would drive Scotland's industrial revolution. The tobacco lords' downfall illustrates how quickly global economic systems can collapse when political circumstances shift. Their story reminds us that even the most powerful commercial empires remain vulnerable to forces beyond their control, and that fortunes built on distant dependencies can vanish as suddenly as they appeared.